From the inner sense of time comes the ancient poet's rhyme, bringing us the master key to open up the mystery. From the depth of time and space, we arrive in quiet grace, finding what is meant to be as we explore the mystery, pouring forth from days gone by. We can hear the poet sigh from the depth of ecstasy, moving into mystery. Hello, and welcome again to Creative Connections. I'm your host, Gary Blanchard, and today my guest is Bruce McDowell, who is the head brewer at Lost Towns Brewing in Hardwick. Bruce, welcome.
Thank you, Gary. Thanks for having me on the show today.
Well, thanks for coming on. I've been coming to Lost Towns for a little while and really enjoying the beer. How did you get started with brewing?
So it all started, probably about 15 years ago. I started home brewing. My brother-in-law was actually home brewing, and he had lost the interest in it.
Okay.
So I persuaded him to give me his brewing kit and his keg refrigerator, and I set forth trying to brew my first batch of beer. And it intrigued me. I've loved beer since I was, 17 years old, 18 years old. But the craft beer was really getting going around that 15 years ago. Sam Adams had hit the scene, some of the other brewers hit the scene. It was really intriguing me to see if I could make something similar or as good as some of those folks.
Okay. And how did it go from being a hobby to more of a vocation?
Well, so being a hobby, again, I did it for about 15 years, and I can say, knock on wood, I don't see any wood around here, but knock on wood, I never had anything that was undrinkable. And over the years, I perfected my craft, perfected some different recipes. They all started in various places. And then the opportunity at Lost Town presented itself to me, and I'd always talked about opening my own brewery, and it just seemed the right time to take on the endeavor.
Okay. So Lost Towns seems to be a group endeavor.
Correct. So I am working at Lost Towns with my good friends and partners, Jim and Pam Spurrell. The three of us are the owners of the brewery, and as you mentioned, I do most of the beer brewing. However, Jim and Pam both help me, along with my son and their son, and my wife and daughter also work out at the brewery, so it's kind of a family and friends affair currently.
Okay. And when you go to the brewery, that's exactly the feeling you get.
That's the atmosphere. That's the atmosphere we want to provide. We don't want to be a big brewery. We certainly don't want to be Anheuser-Busch. There are other breweries out there, where it's a lot of commotion or it's a circus-like atmosphere. And we are not that, and we don't strive to be that. And we try to have a very low-key vibe. Be able to get with our customers, the intimate's not the word, but get very friendly with the customers, get our customers to know us, and basically so people can come in here and just have a conversation with us, and they want to come in and see us. They also want to come and drink the beer, obviously, but they really want to, it's that experience that we try to provide people.
Okay. So you have right now, how many different brews?
So we currently have 8 different beers on tap, ranging everywhere from a wheat beer to a blonde ale, 2 or 3 IPAs, I think, a couple of fruited beers, and an amber. I think I hit them all.
Okay. So how that there are stouts and porters and ales and pale ales and Indy pale ales, and what is the difference and how do you brew for that difference?
It's all, so the color scheme is all based on the grain bill you use. The lighter the grain bill, the lighter the beer is going to be. So you, for like a pale ale or a blonde ale, you'd use a really light grain bill. And then as you get darker, you add darker malts and roastier malts to get not only the darkness, but also those flavor profiles you're looking for in your darker beers. On top of that, now we're going to, well, we can talk about hops, right? So the hops add another level of flavor to the beer. So you get the maltiness, the roastiness, but like in your IPAs, you put a lot of hops in those to bring forth that IPA flavor. Similar to what our Fog Dancer IPA is. It's a triple dry hopped, citrusy, very floral note on it, what you would consider to be a good IPA.
Okay. How do you get like the fruit flavors? Is that from the hops and the wheat, or is that something that you add? Or?
It's actually something we add. So we've got two fruit beers on tap right now. One of them's it's a base wheat beer, and one of them's got mango and passion fruit in it, and the other one's got blueberry, which we just released last week. And unlike some other breweries, our fruit beer is naturally flavored with fruit purees, instead of using artificial flavors to get that blueberry or whatever fruit you're trying to get. We try to stick with all natural ingredients, and with our blueberry, for example, we actually source that puree locally.
Okay, so when you're developing a new beer, what's your process?
So first thing you do is going to sound funny, but you go out and look on the internet. It's very, very hard to come up with a new beer from scratch. I've been doing it long enough now, I could probably do it if I really tried. But there is a plethora of information on the internet, and that's where you start. You start by, hey, I want to brew, like I'm looking at brewing a Scottish ale in a few weeks.
Oh, okay.
And, a Scottish ale, well, what does that look like? Because I've never brewed one before, not even when I was home brewing. So you go out and do some research and get the base for the Scottish ale, and then from there, then you start building your flavor profiles. Maybe you want a little darker, you want a little lighter, so you might change this grain or that grain. You might want it to be a little hoppier or less hoppy, you change the hops. Other things you can actually change to affect the flavor is the yeast. I wouldn't use like a California ale yeast in a Scottish ale. I would use either a London ale yeast or something to that nature. So even the yeast profiles affect the flavors of the beer.
Okay, so it sounds like this is a combination of science and art.
A little bit of science, a little bit of art, a little bit of luck.
Okay.
There's definitely science behind it. Through my home brewing years, I really didn't get too much into the science. I can tell you, as a home brewer, I didn't even measure the alcohol content of my beer. I just kind of, I brewed it. I knew there was alcohol in it. My friends liked it, so it was all good. Here, there's a little bit more science to it. Water temperature, water profiling, with additives and stuff. We don't do that at Lost Towns yet. We're possibly going to do that in the future. And there's a whole humongous science behind it that I'm just barely scratching the surface as of right now.
Okay. This is something I never thought of. When you're commercially brewing, you need to be more aware of things like allergens and ingredients.
Correct. So the biggest thing, so the first thing you want to be aware of when you're brewing is clean, right? Everything has to be clean and sanitized. If you think it's clean, you go clean it again because it's not clean. You have to know it's clean. That's the starting point, because if it's not clean, any number of different things can get into your beer that will throw the beer flavor off. So cleanliness is really important. In fact, I would go to say that 90% of a brewer's job is janitorial. So then once you know it's clean, so there's some brewers out there that do gluten-free. That's a big thing for some folks. We do not have a gluten-free beer as of yet. You have to be aware what's in your beer, because your clientele could come in and have specific allergies to things. Although most people that come into the brewery that have allergies, they know if they're allergic to beer or not, because
right.
they've come in contact with it. So that's something we don't typically brew beer. traditionally, we don't add anything really funny to it. It's, malts, hops, water, yeast, some fruits, if you will. Nothing really outlandish or outrageous.
Right. And also you have to know the alcohol by volume.
Correct.
How do you determine that?
It's a tool called a hydrometer.
Okay.
And basically you take samples through your brewing process, and based on the hydrometer reading, there's a calculation. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head because I use a calculator on my computer to do it. And basically it measures the starting gravity of the beer and the ending gravity of the beer. You take that difference and then multiply it by, and again, I don't remember the calculation, and it comes up with the alcohol by volume level.
Okay. What can affect that alcohol by volume level?
It really is the sugars in the beer that generate the alcohols. So when you start brewing, you use your grains, you put them in your mash tun, and then you mix that grain with hot water, and then you let it steep. The steeping of the grains brings out the sugars. Then you rinse the grains and put that in your boil kettle. Then you boil that, and it becomes wort. Wort is what they call unfermented beer. Then goes in the boil kettle, gets transferred into your fermentation vessel, where you add the yeast. Now, the sugar makes the yeast happy, so basically the yeast eats the sugars and expels the alcohol. And that's where you get your alcohol by volume. So some things that can affect it is you can add more sugars to your beer. Different malt levels will affect the alcohol by volume of your beer. As well as not letting your yeast fully ferment. That'll actually lower it. So there's things you have to be wary of when you're brewing. You need to make sure your yeast is fully fermented. You want to make sure, again, there's no bad stuff in there to throw the yeast off. But it's really the sugars combined with the yeast that produce that.
Okay. So I noticed, looking sometimes at the menu board, there can be a vast difference in the alcohol by volume.
Correct.
What are there certain types of brews that tend to have higher alcohol content than others, or?
Again, it really goes back to the grain that we talked about earlier. The lighter the grain, the less sugar you can be extract from it. The other thing is the amount of water you add to it. The more water you put in with your grains, the more diluted the sugars become. So typically your grain bills on your porters, your stouts, your IPAs, it's a bigger grain bill. You actually let it boil for longer, and you let it steep for a little longer. That brings out more sugars, whereas your blonde ales, and even your pale ales, you don't let it set so long. And there's different techniques of what they call sparging, is when you're rinsing your grains in that secondary step. Some beers, you let the sparge water sit and then drain it, put some more and then drain it and let it steep again. Or you can fly sparge it, where you're just raining some water down over it and transferring it over to get the correct level in your boil kettle. That'll affect it as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, you currently have 8 different beers.
Correct.
How many can you brew at one time?
I can have up to 5 brews going at one time. And they can be in various stages. So currently, I have that right now. I have 4 fermentation vessels and 1 bright tank, which is a conditioning tank. And in those vessels, each of them hold 3 barrels of beer, which is 93 gallons of beer. So I can hold up to 15 full barrels of beer. And don't ask me to do the 93 times 5 because I can't do it that fast.
Okay, so you guys are still in the small range.
We are a nano brewery, and we are just brewing on a 3-barrel system, and that is pretty small. For an example, the last beer I brewed was the 20th batch of beer I've brewed since February. So that kind of gives you an indication of how much we can brew at any given time.
So right now, if people want a Lost Towns brew, where do they go to get it?
So you can go to a couple places to get it. You can come to the tap room over at 483 Main Street over in Hardwick / Gilbertville, Massachusetts. If you're local to where I live out in Leominster, Massachusetts. We are actually distributing our Fog Dancer cans in Cappy's Liquor Store over in Fitchburg. Let's see, where else are we on? Oh, we have Pie Town over in Barry carries our cans as well. And then we also have Ye Old Tavern in West Brookfield we just actually delivered a keg to them. So we will have our World Chaos beer on tap over at Ye Old Tavern.
That's great. So, right now the distribution is small.
Very small.
But, you're starting to get some range.
That's the hope, right? We really want to try and expand our footprint, drive the brand, drive the name, and get people really interested to come out to the brewery and try the beer. Distribution, like I said, we only have the Fog Dancer in cans, but if somebody picks up a can of Fog and says, hey, this is great, I want to know more about Lost Towns, that will entice them to come out and visit the brewery.
Right. And when you go out to visit the brewery, as I've alluded to before, you've really have created an atmosphere there.
Yes.
One thing I love, I was drawn to Lost Towns Brewing because of my interest in the Lost Towns of the Quabbin. Mm-hmm. And you have some of that history on the wall.
Yes, we do. Yep. In fact, the logo for Lost Towns Brewing was actually logo and the name. The logo was derived from the top of a barn that was covered underwater, and hence the name's Lost Towns. It's in homage to the 4 lost towns that were consumed when they made the Quabbin. And
also, you guys present a lot of entertainment.
We try. So on Friday nights, we have our open mic night with Joe and John. Gary actually comes out and performs as well. And I believe your wife actually comes out and does some poetry reading.
My wife comes and does poetry as well.
Yep, so they put on a great show. Anybody's welcome to come and bring their guitar, or pick up the guitar, or sing, or comedy. We're really open on Friday nights to doing whatever. On Sundays, we have performances between 2 and 4 or 3 and 5. We're switching up our times, and that's local performers from around the area. I know Gary's played before, Jim LaRue's played, and a few other entertainers from around the area.
Unfortunately, this past Sunday, the storm kind of canceled out Chuck and Mud.
Yep, the storm canceled Chuck and Mud. I was there, but Chuck and Mud weren't, but that's okay.
Yeah, they come a long way from Worcester, I believe. So,
yep.
But yeah, what I like too is that the performers are treated as professionals.
Yes, and we try that. We treat them like we would want to be. We would want anybody to treat us, right? Mm-hmm. They come into a nice casual environment, as we've already talked about. We try and set that tone, and they try and take a very low key approach to the way they deliver their music, right? They're not delivering to a stadium. They're not too loud. It's very low key. We have everything from bluegrass music to 60s, 70s rock, a little bit of country mixed in there. So yeah, it's a nice low key environment. Someplace you can come and sit and enjoy a beer without getting blown out of the water.
Yeah, and it's. What I like is you see a lot of families.
Yep.
Coming, and you occasionally see some canines coming in.
Actually, we are very dog friendly. We are absolutely family oriented, family friendly. Bring the kids. We are absolutely pet friendly. We definitely have a dog following. And interesting enough, we had a gentleman come in one week with a parrot.
Oh, really?
And the parrots, we got some great pictures. It's up on our social media. I got to hold the parrot. The parrot's kind of flying around, hanging out with people on tables. It was kind of a fun afternoon.
Okay, yeah. But the day I performed, some friends of mine came with their two children.
Yep.
And it was wonderful. They got to play games at the table. Mm-hmm. Right now, I believe you are strictly sort of like bring your own food.
Unfortunately, right now we are in the bring your own food stage. It's been a little challenging, shall we say, with COVID. At first during COVID, we had to have food. That restriction got lifted, but our business has not rebounded as quickly to be able to get those big food trucks in. We can't guarantee them sales. So where we are with our development of the business back to the business, we've really only been open since April. The business closed in August of last year, and we really didn't reopen until April of this year. So we're still trying to feel our way through the whole COVID thing. The Delta variant certainly is not doing us any favors right now.
Right.
We are following all the CDC guidelines. And we make sure we have a clean environment and we're as safe as possible. All the members of the staff are vaccinated, so and we have not had any issues.
Yeah, and I think from the standpoint, both as a musician and as an audience member, the atmosphere created there is one of the best I've seen, particularly for an open mic. A lot of times when you go to an open mic, the only audience are the other performers waiting to perform. Mm-hmm. But at Lost Towns, we get all kinds of people coming in to enjoy the music, to enjoy the beer,
yep,
and just to enjoy the atmosphere.
I would agree. A perfect example was even last weekend or last Friday night, right? You have the performers and their families that come in, but you have the other folks that just come out for a nice Friday night. They bring the food, and even me and my partners were there as spectators this past Friday night, and we had a good time, just kind of sitting there because none of us certainly are performers. So we sat and did a lot of listening. We didn't do much performing. So
yeah, and listeners are important.
Oh, absolutely.
And there are conversations going on
all the time,
but people are also respectful listeners.
Yeah, we've actually seen that. You're right. They're very respectful. Always clap. They try to not overpower the music, and the musicians don't try and overpower the crowd either. So you can actually still listen and have your conversation
without having to yell over the music.
Right. Exactly.
From my wife's standpoint, it's rare to go to an open mic where people actually quiet down and listen to the poetry.
That's interesting. I never thought of that actually, but you're right. Now that you mention it, I'm usually working behind the bar, but now that you mention it, they do get really subdued when she gets up to read. And it's good because for people like her and even people like me as a songwriter, my lyrics are important. Right.
And there I feel like they're being heard.
Yes.
You guys have a patio being built?
Oh, yes, we do. So we are currently in the, I will say, middle stages of completing our outdoor seating space. It is on the left side of the building as you're facing the building. It's going to be about 40-ish seats once completed. We're putting up a 12-foot retaining wall now. We're grading everything. We're going to get an electricity back there, and we hope in the near future to be able to host some of the musicians outside.
Great. And then that's wonderful in the age of COVID, but just particularly spring, summer, into fall, sitting outdoors and kind of performing outdoors is a really nice, relaxed feeling.
Yep. I personally love to sit outside, have a beer, and kind of sit and hear what's going on, see what's going on. I think it's going to be a really nice space when it's done, and it will still have, it'll still foster that coziness of the inside space because it is going to be totally walled in on all four sides with emergency exits as needed. But I still think we will have that coziness. We're not going to be, because we're going to be outside. We have neighbors we have to be attentive to. So there'll be no rock and roll big bands out there, but we can. I think we can create the same ambiance we've done inside in the outside space.
Okay. So what days and hours are you open?
So currently, Lost Towns is open from 3 to 8 on Fridays. We're open from 12 to 8 on Saturdays and 12 to 6 on Sundays.
Okay. And one more time for the address.
Lost Towns Brewing, 483 Main Street, Gilbertville, Mass. 01301.
Right.
I think that's right.
Yeah. Well, people are, going to be going and not mailing you things.
Yep. LostTownsBrewing.com is probably the best way to stay up with us. You can also follow us on Facebook, and we are also on Instagram. That's where you get all the updates on the patio progress, new beer releases, pretty much hours of open. That's where you would have found out that Mud was unable to come out through the storm. So you absolutely follow us on social media.
Bruce, thank you so much for coming in and talking to me, and thank you and Pam and
Jim.
I knew I was going to forget his name, for creating such a wonderful space for us in Hardwick.
No, we're happy to do it. This is, me, Jim, and Pam. Beer is our passion, and I'm lucky to be able to bring my passion to everybody now.
Okay, and I want to thank you all for tuning in, and I'll see you again next time on Creative Connections. From the inner sense of time comes the ancient poet's rhyme, bringing us the master key to open up the mystery. From the depth of time and space, we arrive in quiet grace, finding what is meant to be, as we explore the mystery, pouring forth from days gone by. We can hear the poet sigh, from the depth of ecstasy, moving into mystery.